I was just reading over some questions that I've gotten recently from people about finances in their business. And a few people know that I'm an angel investor in a business, so I feel like they come to me to talk about getting angel investors and about raising capital in their business. For people who are thinking about trying to raise capital from investors in some way, I think you need to stop for a moment and just think about what is in it for the investor. Think about what is their gain going to be? How are you going to give them a return on their investment? So a few people that I've talked to, really when we talked it out, what they needed to do was look at either getting some loans or making money in their business as opposed to raising money. Because in order to raise money, usually there's either an exit plan, IPO, going public, or selling the company. So that's why capital is usually involved with startups, like tech startups, things like that, is because there's an exit strategy, a time at which the investor will either get the big payoff of the sale or selling their equity shares for IPO. The other thing is that when you involve investors in your business, that's giving up ownership. What you're selling them is a piece of your company, which requires a number of things in terms of bookkeeping as far as your company and your business structure. So real quick, I'm just going to turn my screen around to show you a PDF that I made up for choosing the right business entity for you. Let me see if you're able to see that. Hang on. Okay, so where we start is, what kind of biz entity do I need? First question is, are there two or more owners? If you are the only owner, you can go over here to the yes. The next question is, are you raising capital, planning an IPO, or need to fund and stock in inventory? So the other thing could be an IPO or an exit strategy to sell your company. So if you do have two or more owners, you also have the planning capital, raising capital, planning an IPO, or need funds to stock inventory. So basically, if you are going to do a large project like this that requires capital, either to get the company to a valuation where you could eventually go public, or if it's something massive where you're stocking a lot of inventory, you have physical inventory that you're selling, those are the two times it really makes sense to raise capital. And if you are going to be raising capital for either of these things, you really need to operate as a C Corp as opposed to an LLC or an S Corp. I'm going to turn it around again. Now, I'm not a corporate lawyer, so of course there are always it depends answers. So there are also friends and family rounds of funding things that can be more loosely arranged than actually getting venture capitalists and angel investors. But for the most part, I feel like people who have their own business, who want to maintain control, who don't want to sell off equity, raising capital in that sort of traditional startup sense usually doesn't necessarily make sense, especially if you've already started your company as an LLC and planned on running it that way. It can be kind of a big jump to then go to structuring it as a C Corp, forming a board, giving up control. Once you have a board, it's voted on. It's no longer just exactly what you want to do. There are a lot of regulations. There are regulations in terms of what you can take as salary, what a reasonable salary for you to take is, how much you have to pay different people in your company, how you file taxes. All of that changes once you do a C Corp. If you already are a C Corp and you've been planning on raising capital all along, then that is totally fine. It's just mainly that the people I talked to more recently, I don't see them really wanting to give up that kind of control in their own company. Another thing that's different between having a corporation with a board and just having your company as an LLC, oops, sorry, I left the sound on. Having your own company as either an LLC or a sole proprietor it's really easy to pivot and change directions. Like if you've started your company with one focus, and as you go along, you find the people you most want to work with, and what you're offering isn't exactly what they want, it's pretty easy to pivot and change. Hey, Melissa, how's it going? Thanks for jumping on here. So once you have a corporate structure and a board that you're answering to who gets to vote on what changes you want to make. Oh, thanks for the hearts, Melissa. I appreciate that. yeah, it's not as easy to pivot anymore. And this is another thing that's come up when I've talked to people about starting not-for-profit organizations too, is some of it, again, you give up control. You have a board that you're accountable to. You're no longer the owner of the company. You may be the largest shareholder, but you are not the sole proprietor. You're not the only owner anymore. So it makes a big difference. And particularly if you're going into nonprofit structure, there's a lot more paperwork to keep track of, and it is much more difficult to pivot and change what you're focusing on, particularly depending on how the articles of incorporation or the sort of all the rules and regulations that you write up in drafting the corporate resolutions are stated, and more so for the nonprofit sector. You can be really confined by that if you decide you really want to pivot and change the focus of your business. So those are just a few things I was thinking about this morning as I was writing up a follow-up to a phone call from the other day, is that, and especially when you're starting out, I just feel like until you really get the company going and firmly footed, it's difficult to raise capital. I mean, you have to think about doing a valuation of the company, which when you're first starting out, it's difficult to have a valuation until you really get your product rolling and see what the income is like. The valuation is how you then base the amount of invested income on the percentage of ownership, equity ownership, that those people investing get. So early on, most startup companies aren't worth a whole lot, to be honest. I mean, you're investing money into getting them started. There's often potential, but you either have to prove that potential through advertising dollars, through product sales, through service sales, things like that. So yeah, I think for often, if you don't have to go that route for your business plan, it's probably easier for small business owners to really just focus on their sales instead of fundraising. Again, it completely depends on your model and what you're going for, but I just thought I'd throw that out there with a quick periscope. So if anyone has any comments or questions or is interested in this personally, anyone have any experience raising money or being a venture capitalist, angel investor type of thing, hop in and chime up. Yeah, that's my thought for today. So it was great to talk to you all.